Today I will be building a new mug. I chose this material handler manufactured by Sennebogen because I had all these green pieces laying around from the John Deere skidder set. But the challenge is I only have 24 hours to build this mug. So of course I first started off with the chassis. It has to have 4-wheel drive and steering. The first challenge arose when I had to make the steering and drive axle go through the turntable. Luckily I knew about this technique used in these two sets, where you use a clutch gear and driving ring to get two axles through one turntable. Then I started on the frame of the superstructure. First of all I had to get the drive to where the engine would be. Now I started building the engine. It's a 4-cylinder inline engine. Now I added the pistons and attached the engine to the superstructure. Now it's time for the outriggers. It took quite a while to figure out the perfect mechanism to lock them in place, but eventually I settled on this pretty easy mechanism, but it works great. Now it's time for the main part, the boom. I tested this technique I wanted to use for a future mug that I can't tell you about yet, but it seems to work great. Now it's time to attach the boom to the superstructure. Now it's time for the pneumatics that also came from the skidder set. I attached it firmly to the boom and did some tests. I left out the footage of me putting in the tubes because I really struggled with that. Then it was time for the second part of the boom, but I ran out of panels, so I had to use these long lift arms. Luckily I had these two small panels left. Some small tests later, it was time for the lifting cab, which was also one of the functions I wanted to include. First I started with making the frame of the cabin. That was fairly easy. But then it was time for the lifting mechanism, which took quite a while because I wanted to get the perfect balance between strength and range, so it could lift as high as possible but also be able to do it on its own. I used this small pneumatic cylinder, and at the end it had just enough strength to raise the cab on its own. Then I did the pneumatic tubes for the lifting cabin. So then I did all the panels for the superstructure. I started off behind the cab and then worked my way around the superstructure. This is the back of the machine that I'm currently making. Now it's time for the panels around the engine. I had to leave open one spot because the engine was too high, otherwise the entire rear of the machine would need to be higher. So I left out the spot, and that means you can see the pistons going up and down even if the side cover is closed. Now it's time for the claw. Luckily I had these 3 pieces laying around for years that I never knew what to do with, but now I have a great use for them. The problem is I only had 3. That was another challenge because it isn't easy to attach 3 pieces instead of 4. After a couple hours of trial and error, I used the wheel hub piece that also has 3 pins to attach them to. With only a few minutes left on the clock, I reinforced the connection between the superstructure and the boom because it pushed itself apart during operation. And the time is up. Luckily, I got the model finished in the 24 hours. Now it's time to show all the functions this model has. First of all, it can drive and it has a working engine. It also has 4 outriggers that are separately controlled. And the superstructure can turn. It also has 3 pneumatic functions. They are all controlled by the blue pump next to the cabin. The first one is the lifting cab. The second one is the arm going up and down. And the third one is the second part of the arm folding in and out. And it also has the claw that is manually operated. Here you can see a small demonstration of me picking up some pieces with the claw. You can open the claw by pushing it together in a very specific way. I'm really happy with how this mock turned out. What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next video.